Was there anything else you want to discuss quickly? Is that because you
mean,
had
we
voting
just
was one topic. I think there was one other one.
yeah, I think the other one was that I have been telling people to vote for the Green Party, and I think you would disagree with that. I think
I think
mostly because I go for it.
yeah, go on. Sorry, I'll let you finish your question. No, it's fine.
So I think mainly because I think probably one of the main reasons I have is that I think that I feel safe voting for the Green Party is obviously the what I've mentioned before, and that I think that it is incredibly difficult for the Conservative Party to win an election at this point, right? I think
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I'm putting most of my chips down on Keir Starmer being Prime Minister. I think he'll still get a majority. I still think they'll get a majority, but there might also be a minority or a coalition. But I think the chance of the Conservatives being winning the next election is incredibly low. And so at this point, with the Labour Party going so, essentially becoming just a right wing party at this point, like what's progressive about the Labour Party platform at this point? Basically nothing apart from rail nationalisation, which the Tories are also basically on board with at this point, regardless, just maybe not nationalising the rolling stock. There has to be electoral consequences for Labour moving to the right because their shift rightwards is basically entirely for the fact that they believe that there's a grand portion of the left-leaning vote that they can always just assume they're
Yeah.
going to get at every election because they're too scared to go anywhere else. And so they know that with this captured electorate, they can move as far to the right as they want to try and engage with swing voters because there's not going to be any punishment for doing so. So we have to punish them. Otherwise, they won't move.
I think for me, it just depends on what seat you're in. I think look, if Labour do knock on my door and I'm tempted, I'm so close to reaching out to the Labour candidate and just saying like, look, man, I want to vote for you guys, but your policies are kind of trash. I'm going to need something here. Show me something. Give me a reason to vote for you because I don't like my local MP. But that's the way my kind of plan to kind of leverage my vote, which is kind of pathetic to be honest. But it's the only cards I have, so I'm not going to let them take that from me. But that's and I think I'd recommend anyone just contact your local Labour candidate. Be respectful as possible and just say like I've read through your draft manifesto, it's kind of trash because we have until now until the
Yeah,
manifesto set in stone
that's
to
true.
for any changes, and that's for me. Like I don't mind if you're saying Labour need to show me something or I'm going to vote Green. I think that's fine because you're kind of leveraging your vote as well, and so I think you've got to tell them like I want to vote Lib Dem because the Lib Dems are going to get rid of these policies that I don't like, the anti-protest bill laws and all that kind of stuff. um, they're going to implement stuff like proportional representation, which I like, and I think the Lib Dems actually have a good shot of winning in my seat because the Lib Dems nationally are looking a lot better, etc. And I think more people are going to go from Tory to Lib Dem rather than Tory to Labour, for example. And I'd try and make the case, as much as they don't deserve it, as much as possible, to try and convince the person I'm speaking to and myself the Lib Dems have a shot in the seat I live in because I know they really don't.
Yeah.
But that's the way I'm going to play this, and if the audience want to play it like that, it's a fair thing to do. I think even if you yourself said like I'm going to vote Green because of this reason, if Labour don't show me something, because the problems that we might run into is that like I said, the Tory party are a machine, and
Mm.
you never count them out until it's like it's the final villain thing. It's you ain't there because you ain't sure if there's a phase two or the boss music comes back on and they're gonna do something crazy or Labour implode because we've already explained how Labour's messaging is poor. They're awful in interviews, and if people have any doubts and think, well, Tories are crap, but if Labour are struggling this much, they can't have answers. I'm not voting for a party that don't know what they're doing. I'll be honest. That could happen. That could easily creep in, and we've seen electoral shocks before. When Hillary Clinton lost to Trump, etc.
Yeah.
Phil said himself, the Tory party are going to bring in a big hitter to run their election campaign. So these people are, the people in charge of the Tory party now, they're clowns, but the ones who run the electoral side of it, they're not stupid. Do you know what I mean? They're not stupid. They have the media apparatus. They have a lot of tools at their
Yeah.
disposal they can use. So for me, it's try and leverage your vote as best as possible because no one can blame me for that. No one can blame you for that, and just do your best to try and convince your local Labour candidate to feed that back that you're unhappy and you are on the fence about voting Labour, but you need something from them. That's the way I would kind of couch it. And like,
I mean,
is it going to
let's.
work? Probably not. Is it the
I mean,
best option we have? Yes, and I hope that the Labour members do something similar where they try and push as hard as they can. Because, like I said, the only thing we can do is try here at this point, and I don't think
yeah.
a Labour win is in the bank, and I don't think they're going to take votes for guarantee votes for granted because that's what Hillary Clinton did. She's like, for every one vote I lose in the Rust Belt, I'll win two in like some other random state, and you're like, well, how'd that go for you? It's almost like when people vote Tory, they want the Tories. They don't want
I
Tory
think the
light.
problem is that Hillary Clinton took swing areas for granted in a way that the problem is that Labour are taking safe areas for granted.
It's not.
And
She didn't take swing. She didn't take. She didn't take swing for granted. She took the Rust Belt for granted, which is kind of their version of the Red Wall, I guess, for the Democrats. So she
I
took
mean,
Wisconsin, Pennsylvania,
Ohio.
and Ohio. Yeah, she took those states for granted. They're not swing states. That's how Trump won, because he won the core of the DNC. So they weren't. These were not swing. These were like pure like blue states. So some of these people who voted Trump were twice Obama voters. So you don't
Yeah.
take your core for granted, and that's the mistake I think Labour are going to make, because they'll win the swing. But like I said to you, in DMs, is without the core, they're going to struggle in certain seats. They might just skim them by a few hundred, but if they don't, then it's pretty scary. And I think, like I said, the apathy is so high that I don't see turnout being that good at the next election.
No, it absolutely is not going to
And
be.
that
Also, because
benefits
voter
the
ID as
Tories.
well.
Yeah, the
is going
voter
to
ID
turn
thing
out
will hurt the Tories, I think, because we saw
I
that
agree.
before.
I do agree with that, but I also think
Stephen Rees-Mogg was like,
will,
our plan to rig the election didn't go very well, did it?
I do.
And he openly
Also,
admitted it.
I'll push back a little though. I think that voter ID will hurt the Tories less at a general election because, in general, turnout at local elections is older, right? It got burned at the local elections because of voter ID, because loads of old people couldn't vote. And I think that a larger proportion of young people will vote at a general election, and therefore a bigger proportion of the people turned away will also be younger people. I still think broadly it will hurt the Conservatives slightly more than it will hurt the other sectors of the electorate, but I think that the amount to which is going to be focused on Conservative crushing the Conservative vote is going to be less pronounced at a general election. I think the turnout in general will be lower.
Because for me, fundamentally, like, I think the turnout, I'm a bit worried because, like I said, no Riz versus no Riz. But fundamentally, like, this Tory party have to go because they have toxified politics so much, and there has to be consequences for them. Like, if you get to the point that they're at, they have to be voted out, because if we don't vote them out, I don't know what the next 5 years are going to look like after a general. And I think they'll be brought back towards the centre right, back towards the Cameron wing
The issue I
of the
have,
party.
I mean, you'll probably disagree with me on this. I just genuinely think that the absolute ghouls who are in charge of the Labour Party at the moment, I think they're so close to where, the kind of David Cameron era politics that we're theoretically going to be getting from, a future Conservative Party. They're so close. The difference is so minimal to me, right? It's so minimal to me that I think it doesn't. That the idea of them getting into power and then doing nothing with it is so dangerous to the future of progressive politics in this country. That's one of the big problems I have, is that, the kind of economic policies that they're promising us, right, at this moment in time, again, things could change when the manifesto gets released, and I agree with you, right? We can't count our chickens until they've hatched. This is all on grounds of, if things continue with the rhetoric that we're getting at the moment, based upon what we've heard so far from the Labour Party, if all of these positions stay the same on both sides of the political divide, I don't see a big enough difference for me to care at this point. And the 5 years of Keir Starmer doing nothing, not fixing the economy, doing essentially what Blair did, and toxifying the left brand into being the kind of neoliberal, centre-right politics and the economic politics that wasn't helpful for working class people, especially in kind of northern constituencies, because of things like deindustrialization, too much focus on London, too much focus on the southeast, which, again, they've not really shown us anything they're going to change about that moving forward. And I think that it is super dangerous for them to get in power for 5 years and do nothing, and to continue this managed decline. Because if that continues, then I think that populism, right-wing populism, I mean, I say that, what I mean is fascism, right? Is going to be the dominating force in politics after that, because that's where people turn when capitalism fails.
I think the problem is that, like, we've seen fascism with the UKIP party, and they didn't do numbers at election. So I kind of disagree with you there. As long as we have first past the post, the only good thing about it is it keeps out kind of radical parties. And the other thing I'd say is, that kind of neoliberal, whatever, centrist kind of Labour, they did get a hat trick, won 3 elections pretty cleanly. And the other problem is they did help a lot of people. As a kid who grew up under New Labour, like, fundamentally the differences between them and the Tories is a lot. There was a lot more social support, in terms of like housing support and other things like that, and it was a lot better. The system we have now are people just completely dying of poverty. And yes, under New Labour it wasn't perfect. There were problems. There were people who should have been looked after a lot better, and they weren't. There were problems with the way they dealt with the I don't know what it was called back then, but it would be now the DWP and all that kind of stuff, right? But I think fundamentally the difference they would make to people's lives would be it's the problem is that during the selection process, when you get it wrong, you're kind of stuck.
Mm,
And that's
you're
one of the
too
reasons
wrong.
why having party membership is important. That's why I would never say to a person, cut your party membership or whatever, because at the end of the day, like Starmer's going to go, and you're going to get a chance to pick someone else. Make sure you don't get duped. I don't
At
blame
least,
anyone
at
for
least,
getting duped,
and at least
but
with Labour, you don't have to be a member. You can just be a member of an affiliated trade union, which I am. So I don't have
yeah,
to be a
yeah.
Labour member. But the issue I have is that I agree with everything that you say about New Labour, that they did good things, they did bad things. You've got to take it as a whole, right? I think the issue with New Labour wasn't that they did bad things, that things were bad when they were in power. What's the long-term plan? What happened because of New Labour being in power? What did we get? What did they precipitate? And they precipitated a shift to the right, a shift to the right in economics. They allowed someone like the austerity platform of David Cameron to be de facto good politics, right? They didn't push back on Thatcherism as as a macroeconomic
Uh,
ideology. The housing crisis we have right now is downwind of the failures of the New Labour administration. Like the things like, for example, buy-to-let mortgages, for example, the focus on continually increasing house prices ad infinitum, them getting into bed with the financial sector and continuing deindustrialization. That's not saying that they didn't do good things on benefits, but those can be removed. That can be changed, and it was changed. But the failures of them on macroeconomic policy is the reason why we're allowed to be in this situation right now, when we need
I,
genuine, like actual
I
sea
think
change that fundamentally changes the relationship, but economic relationships that we have in this country, and we're not getting that from Keir Starmer.
I think one of the problems like I have with or a few of the problems I have with what you're saying is like, the argument that New Labour allowed austerity to be ushered in. I think it's very unfair to them. Even George Osborne said like the stuff that Gordon Brown did after the recession were the right things to do. The problem is that the media allowed the Tories to come in with austerity, and Labour were too hot. The Labour were too scared, under Ed Miliband to kind of combat the narrative. And they allowed the kind of the whole narrative of the household budget to take hold. But it wasn't really. It wasn't. I wouldn't blame Labour for that. I'd blame more the media, and I'd blame the Tories for that because they did win on a marketing campaign of Labour bankrupted the economy. We have to tighten up our belts. It's like a house and blah blah blah. And they were allowed to get away with a lot of that
Well,
stuff.
that's the
With
problem.
the buy-to-let mortgages. Yeah,
The
with
problem
the
is
buy-to-let
that.
mortgages, like there
Yeah,
are a
go
lot
for
of
it.
problems there
Sorry.
with housing and all sorts of other things. Like there are lots of problems there, and this is stuff where we can kind of kick Labour now and say like, how are you going to resolve this stuff? Because they're talking about building on the green belt, kind of Greenland. Where I'd rather they build on brown sites, for example, which I think makes a lot more sense. But
Yeah.
there are a lot of things we can kick them for now, and if we get involved now, rather than just being apathetic and saying, "Oh, it's kind of shit, isn't it?" Is get involved now and say, "Look, man, you guys have got a shot at winning. It's not guaranteed. You take votes for granted, and you see what happened to Clinton. You see what happened to you guys in certain other elections
22.
where you lost and you thought you'd win, e.g., 2015, where you had a polling lead and you still lost, right?" And I would emphasize that point to me. If you want to win, offer me something to be positive about, where I can take it to other people and say, "Look, man, these are good policies, and this is why we should vote for Labour," rather than 13 years and they're not Tories, etc. That's why we should vote for them. And that for me is, right now, rather than being apathetic, is we have a chance to try and do something. And if we fail, and if the manifesto is complete garbage, then I'll be like, "Oh, look, I'll probably vote for you, but you ain't getting anything more than me. And in 5 years' time, if you don't fix things, then I'll vote Lib Dem, because what's the point of you at that point?" And a lot of people ask the question, what's the point of Starmer if he's not going to do certain things? And I agree with them to an extent. Like, if it's going to be kind of not kind of even Tony Blair, is it going to be like David Cameron? Then I'm out, dog. I'm not voting for less risk. What's his name? David Cameron. I'm not doing that. Like that's going to hurt my soul way too much. But yeah,
I think
sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say in the I think that the household budget stuff was precipitated by the media, but it wasn't. Labour in power acted as though that was the case as well, so they also allowed that headspace to be able to be taken by the media, right? This is why PFIs happened. PFIs specifically happened because they wanted to keep government borrowing off the books by leaving it as PFI debt, because that's not government debt, that is specific debt that is being burdened upon specific public services. So they were running budget surpluses while creating PFI debt, and PFI debt is real debt. That's not fake debt that money borrowed from the Bank of England is, right, with quantitative easing, which Gordon Brown luckily learned from 2008 2010. But because they spent their entire time going, look how good we are, the economy, we're running a budget surplus, that's how you run a good economy, that is also playing into that narrative. But moving on from that, the other reason why I want to vote for the Green Party and not for the Labour Party is that one of the things that destroys politics in this country, destroys policy, it destroys the conversations that we have, and I think you will agree with me on this, is first past the post. It has to go. It has to go as soon as possible, and there has to be a specific case made for it. And the easiest way of making the case for it is by having an election that doesn't make any sense under first past the post, right? By having a position where if the Labour Party don't support even an alternative vote, a ranked choice vote, like two-party preferred, to the point where they can guarantee that they can then get second preferences from Greens and from the Lib Dems, and you force them into that position by saying, look, well, I'm voting for the Green Party. These are the people who have my principles. And the only way you're getting my vote is if I second preference you at a future election where some other kind of representative voting system is on the cards. Because at the end of the day, right, what if Labour get a huge majority, which I think they will do. I still think they will do, but we disagree on that. The proof of the pudding will be in the eating. But assuming we get to the point where people suck it up and then support the Labour Party, good manifesto or bad manifesto, as I believe it will, and you disagree.
Well, I don't disagree. I'm saying wait and see. I'm saying put some pressure on them now to try and do something. But I'm not disagreeing and saying the manifesto is good. I've read through the draft thing. I was like, beyond nationalising rail, I'm like, this is boring. There's nothing here that's very interesting.
Thank you for correcting me there. I appreciate it. But in general, right, if they win the election with a majority, we're never getting electoral reform. You said this before, right? Electoral reform is never going to be on the cards as long as the Labour Party are in the ascendancy overall. And the only way that you can force that point is by saying.
I just want to clarify quickly. It's only going to happen if there's a hung parliament. That's the only way we'll get it. It's not through Labour winning or the Tories winning. It's got to be. That's what we saw in 2010 when the Lib Dems got the infamous AV referendum and sacrificed everything to get it, and then still lost. That's the only way we get
austerity. But,
oh Jesus! Don't do that.
But that's my point. Is that if we continue just throwing our support behind Labour to get the Conservatives out, we kick that can so far down the road, and we continue with broken politics. Because why do you think, right? I mean, you agree with me on this, as far as I'm aware, that the reason why we're getting this dog whistle racism from the top of the Labour Party, which should never be happening, is because all they care about is these swing voters in the red wall, right? Because that's how first past the post manipulates our electoral system to make bad policy all of the discussion, right? This is why a small section of property-owning boomers have had basically de facto control over political policy for 45 years. I mean, obviously, sort of the next, it was right to buy, but the fact that there was an asset-owning, property-owning cohort, generational cohort, that has just drifted from election cycle to election cycle, controlling who gets elected and controlling what policy that they have. That's because of first past the post, and that will continue. Obviously, there'll be different demographics and different groups of people who have this, this cohort control over political policy. And that I just think that is so important that goes. And I think that this is as far as I'm concerned, this is the perfect time to do it. Right, this is the perfect time to do it because Labour have a good chance of being in pole position to be able to have the next Prime Minister. The Conservatives are really on the back foot, right? If it was 2015, for example, I would never be saying this, even on Ed Miliband's manifesto that I didn't like, because fundamentally, it was close. It was closer than it is now, and the Conservative Party didn't have such a massive cloud that they have over them now with all of the shit that's happened over the last 3 years. The public mood against the Conservative Party now is gigantic, right? It's far more ever was in 2015. And I think this is the perfect time to say, look, my principles are these. I am now not compromising on them, and the only way that you can get me to compromise with you is through a change of the electoral system. And if you get to the point where you've got 4 different parties separated by 20% of the vote overall, because people are so disillusioned with political parties and there is no overall support for the two-party system anymore, that electoral reform just becomes inevitable at that point. And that's another reason why I have for not wanting to just give my de facto support to the Labour Party.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of disagreements with people who say I can't vote Labour for whatever reason, right? And the only thing is I'd say if anyone here was the ones telling the liberal people and whoever else to suck it up and vote for Corbyn or whatever, and now because they're the ones who have flipped and they say, oh, you got to vote for Starmer, otherwise you support the Tories, and it's like in 2019 they voted Lib Dem or voted Green or whatever. I'm like, that's a bit awkward for you now, isn't it, son? So I'd be careful if you were one of those people, or if anyone was one of those people saying you got to vote Corbyn to get out of the Tories. I was not one of those people. which I can proudly say. But for me, fundamentally, it's like I'm not going to tell someone, "Oh, you have to vote Labour to get the Tories out." I fundamentally believe that, but I would never tell someone how to vote. What I would say is, if in your case, if you want electoral reform and other things, your best bet is voting Lib Dem at that point. It's not voting Green, because the Lib Dems have a lot more support nationally, and at least then, if they win, 15 points or whatever at the general election, they can say, "Look, our policies are actually popular, and one of those key policies is PR." And as much as I clown the Lib Dems, I do it all the time whenever they're mentioned, because I've got over 9,000 reasons to hate them. Hashtag tuition fees. But that's what I'd say is, fundamentally, like, you're better off, as much as I dislike them and I clown them. You're better off voting Lib Dems over Greens, because at least then they'll have more national support, and they can point to a manifesto that has PR as a fundamental point, which is something they have. They have had electoral success in the past. They squandered it. I've never seen a team fumble that badly in a long time. But that's your best bet. But like I said, I'm not going to tell someone how to vote. My fundamental goal is to get rid of this lot. The Tories. In 5 years' time, if Labour have done fuck all with the time that they've gotten, then I'll tell people, look, man, I gave these people a chance. What more do you want? And if they're like, well, you're gonna get the Tories back, it's like the only reason the Tories will come back in is because Labour fucked around for the past 5 years. That's why. If you can't in 5 years separate yourself from the Conservatives and improve people's living standards because of all the economy and the fiscal rule set, that's on you. You've lost because of you. At that point, you were
Yeah.
so far ahead, and you decided to stop, tie your shoelaces, and have a drink break, and the other person's run past you. You can't blame anyone else but yourself. And that for me is going to be the problem that I will see in 5 years' time. But fundamentally, right now, I will use my vote to get rid of the Tories. And if you want to vote the protest vote or whatever because you think Labour are going to win, or because I'm not questioning, like, for me, I have different theories on how the election could go and things like that, and that's fine. I'm not, because this is all hypothetical until we get there. So I
Yes.
don't have any fundamental problems. I'm not going to say, "Oh, you're supporting the Tories by voting Green," because I'm, like, you vote how you want to vote. The only thing I'd say is, for me personally, getting rid of the Tories is the most important thing. And when I see, my local MP, hopefully when he's voted out, I want to hit him with that Tobey Maguire line and say, "See you, chump," because that's how happy I'll be, because I hate the fucker and I have reasons to hate him. Well, I say hate, dislike. Hate is a strong word. But
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm coming from, and I think we can have disagreements on that, like how to use our vote and whatever else, and what we're going to say to Labour candidates and whatever. But I don't think it's not a bullying mentality of, "Oh, you're supporting centrist Labour candidates and kind of enabling them to be crap when they're in charge." And people say, "Well, do you want the Tories back in?" And just like I wouldn't say to you, "Well, you're helping the Tories by not voting Labour or not voting tactically." Do you know what I mean? And
Things
so
I
there's a
so
nuanced conversation to have here, which you can't.
yeah.
People don't understand that. I don't want to blame Twitter specifically, but commentators don't understand that. We're like, like, you can have some nuance. Do you know what I mean? And just say, like, well, I want to use mine as a protest vote because I think Labour are going to win. And if they don't win after all of this stuff, then they deserve to lose. Like, they're 4-0 up and haven't even kicked a ball yet.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
no, that's
saying. Like,
true.
that's the
4 own
state of play right
goals.
now. Do you know what I
Thing is,
mean?
no, so
Like, people. Yeah,
in
sorry.
general, do you consider yourself utilitarian?
What, like, do you know, it's been so long since I've done politics major, I'll be honest. Are you talking about the Thanos thing where he talks about the benefit for all, so he snaps his fingers and people die, or like,
I mean, yeah, I mean, see, that's how Tim Paul would describe utilitarianism. But yeah,
yeah,
in
that
general,
was yeah, that's kind of ingrained into my brain.
in general, just the idea
But
that things should be done to maximize the best outcomes consequentially, right? What maximizes the best chance of the most positive outcomes on a consequential basis, and you should make that. That's how you should make your decisions. Because I do consider myself a utilitarian.
for
Right?
me,
The
I'll
same
be
way that
honest.
Sam Sealer does.
I've read, like, I've read a bit of Aristotle and stuff in class and things like that, right? And I think he had some good ideas and whatever, right? But fundamentally, right, and I'll be honest, I could not give a shit about, like, how people think about these kind of, like, big philosophical ideas. For me, it's just do your best. Don't fuck up too much in life, and just don't go out of your way to piss off people. Honestly, that's the way I kind of try and live my life. Yes, I clown people. Yes, I annoy people and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But I do it because I care. I criticize Labour because I care, because I want to see them
yeah.
do well. I criticize other commentators because I want to see them do better, and I think we can all do better. And I think, like, I don't want their audience to kind of be gaslit by some jobber who can't come up with proper arguments. Like, if you're gonna gaslight me, bro, do it properly. If you're gonna sell me shitty policies, do it properly. That's the way I kind of come at it from.
The reason why I asked specifically, though, is that the reason why I make the case for the way I'm going to vote is I think that it has the best utilitarian outcomes, right? I think that the best chance of getting good outcomes comes from that vote. I think that people who will say, for example, I want to vote for this candidate because, I feel like they're the best candidate, or for example, or I refuse to vote for this candidate because of whatever emotional reason that I have behind that, I would make my case as to why I think that's a bad idea. Right? When I say I don't want to vote for the Labour Party, I think that my vote is best used by not voting for them. I don't want to say I don't. Because there are plenty of people I know who say I don't want to vote for the Labour Party because the Labour right are in charge and they're my enemy, and I don't want to give them credence for their bad decisions, and I don't want to give my vote to the bad people. For example, the bad part of, because that's the same kind of team sports mentality that you get from people who say I will only
Yeah,
vote for the Labour Party because they're the
uh,
good,
uh,
they're the red team is the good team, right? It's the
honestly,
same
right.
kind of ideology, and I don't like that, and that's why I'm trying to say this is why I think that get the best outcomes from voting for the Green Party or for the Liberal Democrats or for some party that isn't the Labour Party. Do you see what I mean?
I would say like it's a fair argument. But the problem is like if your party don't win and the Tories come back in, you haven't really achieved a lot. The only thing I'd say is like I would again I'm going to plug the video. I'd recommend you watch the video I do on Labour where I kind of flip O'Brien's own quote of footballification of politics, and that's the problem is
Yes.
these people are kind of wedded to teams, and it was a big problem under Corbyn. It was a big problem now under Starmer. Miliband didn't have that problem. He had Millie fandom, which was hilarious, but also really bizarre. For example, but for me, it's just a bunch of people who have drawn battle lines and said like, you need to fall in line and vote for my guy. And now the kind of the script is flipped, and now a lot of the people kind of in the centre left are saying now you need to vote for Starmer, otherwise you're helping the Tories. Like, bro, where were you in 2017, 2019? I didn't see you around. Do you know what I mean? That's the problem I have. So
But
it's either be
a
consistent.
lot of the people now saying, you have
Yeah,
to vote for you have to vote for Labour because you can't let the Tories in, with the same people who are voting Liberal Democrat in 2017.
yeah.
Like, as you're
And
right, you're absolutely right.
if
That
if
people
you
do this
vote
on both
if you
sides.
vote
People do
Lib
this on
Dem,
both sides,
yeah.
right? People do this on both sides.
If you did,
You should make the positive case for why you think in 2017. That's what I was saying. You should. I think Labour are the party to support because they have the best policies. If you disagree with me, fine. But this is the case that I'm laying out. I'm not going to go or say, well, you can't vote this way because of the Tories might get in. I agree with you entirely on that point.
and for me, like I said, in 2015, like Ed Miliband didn't have the best policies, but I would have said best off voting for him. So like for me, it's like you can't be one of those people who say, oh, you got to fall in line and do what to vote how I want you to vote, because otherwise you're helping the other team out. Like if you said that in 2017 and 2019, now you can't turn around and say I'm not going to back Starmer because of whatever reason, right? If you're one of those fall in line people, be consistent. But I tell you, the best genre on Twitter, right, will always be is this you. And you know what? Those liberal people, they get it bad because all you see is, oh, we all have to vote for Starmer to get the Tories out, and all you see is this issue, and it's I can't vote for Corbyn because of this, and this reason, so I'm gonna vote Lib Dem instead. I'm like, oh man, you've clowned yourself. You've
It's
clowned
hypocritical.
yourself.
Plus, unironically, these people, because again, you are right, it is just team sports, it's footballification of politics.
Yeah.
And the irony is that James O'Brien is the same in that regard.
Yeah, honestly, right.
Yeah.
If you watch my video on stream, let me know. But there's like like he kept quoting that all well tweet where he's like, and then the party told you to not believe your eyes and ears or something like that. And I was like, instead of the
This is
party, it's
Starmer!
you guys. You're the one.
That's
No, it's
Starmer!
not It's not Starmer. It's not Starmer telling you to believe it. It's Phil and O'Brien. They're telling you not to believe the evidence of your eyes and ears when they say we're not going to rejoin the single market. That means that we are going to rejoin the single market. They're telling you what's it called? We're not going to be that radical. And they're like, oh, they are. They're going to change your life.
They're going
That's
to
what I
repeal
mean.
the bill. No, they're not actually. They get proportional representation. No,
Oh,
actually, they are actually. It's all just this kind of this them continually trying. It's cope. That's what it is. It's just cope.
it's cope, yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, and that's like I'm not one of those fall in line people. Like I said, like you vote how you want to, and there are consequences to votes, obviously. But for me, if you're going to vote Green or Lib Dem or whatever, if you don't, if it's not tactical voting, I'm not going to berate anyone for that. I'm not going to say we've got the Tories because of you, especially now because if Labour don't go on to win this, that's on them because the Tory party have just shot themselves in the legs and said, and they're trying to sprint. But the problem with Starmer is, and this is a joke I make all the time, so it might not land in the chat, or so I might get berated for it. But it's like if Starmer was the one who shot at Tupac, Tupac would still be alive today.
If you enjoyed this video, please do consider liking and subscribing. It does help out the channel and the algorithm. And if you click the bell notification icon, it will let you know when I go live and when I upload videos. If you'd like to follow me on social media, my handle is @NoJusticeMTG, and that is Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube. If you want to support my channel in a more financial manner, you can do so by becoming a member for just 99p, by super chatting, or by supporting me on Patreon, with the link is in the description of this video. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next segment.